Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I don't think Pete Hegseth, Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, of course, is quite out of the woods yet. I think he's in a pretty strong position. I think he'll get confirmed, even with this contretemps over this civil suit that he settled back in 2017. But there definitely is a push on, now that Gates is no longer the center of attention, a push on to bloody up Hegseth in advance of his confirmation hearing with several Dem senators, Pocahontas, and our very own junior senator from Illinois, declaring him unqualified. And one of the clear lines of attack will be on the identitarian politics inside the Pentagon that the left wants to protect, and Hegseth doesn't. Hegseth on that Sean Ryan podcast from a while back on trans in the military.
Because what the military did, I didn't finish the thought on that, is they committed a Bud Light. Like in search of a non-traditional constituency, they offended their core constituency. So there aren't enough lesbians in San Francisco to man the 82nd Airborne. Mm-hmm. And in trying to cater to that, they lost the boys from Tennessee and Kentucky and Oklahoma. The traditional dudes who did it because they loved their country, or they wanted the adventure, or they, wanted to try tough things, or they need an up and out of their community, whatever it is. They're like, if I wanted to do the woke crap, I could go to the local community college. Being transgendered in the military causes complications and differences. And the book kind of lays out the common arguments that those on the left or others make, which are baked in social.
So that's one piece of it. You can be sure they're going to come at him over those comments, and comments on women in combat roles in the military as well. First Hegseth, and then Duckworth, that junior senator from Illinois I was referencing, responding over the weekend on CNN.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
What's your response? Well, he's wrong, because the women have made us more effective. In fact, our military could not go to war without its 223,000 women who serve in uniform. We would have an ineffective military that was not capable of deployment if we were to pull out all the women and say, you cannot be in combat. For those women who are in roles such as the infantry or Navy SEALs, those women have met the same standards as the men in order to be assigned to those positions. So again, this shows that Mr. Hegseth is not qualified for the position because he doesn't understand, apparently, even after having served, that women are actually vitally important to an effective military.
Mm-hmm. So trans, women in combat, and of course the other line of attack will be his lack of management experience. Duckworth had this to say on that.
He never commanded a unit. He never commanded a company, let alone battalions, brigades, or whole armies. He was a platoon leader. He served at a very low level in the military, and we're talking about an organization that is 3 million servicemen and women and civilians, and a budget of over $900 billion. He does not have the experience to run an organization of that size. So just based on those requirements alone, he is unqualified for the position.
For more on this, please be joined by Stephen Bucci for our weekly conversation. Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. A visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies is where he is now. Stephen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back on the show.
We've talked about the management thing, but I mean, I think it's a little bizarre to talk about commanding a unit in service. There are many Secretary of Defense who have not commanded a unit in service. But if you want to comment on that, and then the other issues, which will be, the source of more fodder because they're easy to understand and because they're identitarian politics oriented, they'll go after, he's against women in combat, he's a misogynist, he's against trans in the military or in combat roles, he's a transphobe. That seems to me where they want to really focus.
Yeah, look, the Democrats under Obama put Chuck Hagel as the Secretary of Defense. And I pointed out at the time that former Senator Hagel, people were going, "Whoa, he's perfect for the SecDef. He was a sergeant in Vietnam." Okay, being a sergeant in Vietnam doesn't disqualify you, but it certainly is not experientially, something that has direct impact on one's ability to be the Secretary of Defense. And frankly, neither does being a senator.
Right.
Senators don't exactly manage, multi-million person organizations. They have a staff of a dozen, so some of this stuff is kind of, it's baloney, and it's also two-faced on the part of Senator Duckworth, because she knows the same thing. I think it's a benefit that Pete has served in combat, has served at that tactical level. The fact that he's never commanded a division or a corps or an army, looking at some of the folks who have done those things, it's probably a benefit, because most of them are so enamored with hearing their own voice that they're of no use. They don't any longer understand what the people on the ground level are going through today, because their experience is 20 or 25 or 30 years out of date, as far as that goes. With regard to the women in combat and trans things, I'm sorry, there's a lot of people who disagree with women in active combat roles. Now, Tammy Duckworth was a pilot. If you want to say women can be pilots, okay. But when we're taking all restrictions off all MOSs, military occupational specialties, so you can be a SEAL, you can be a Ranger, you can be an infantryman. Okay, those folks pass the schools, but if you look at the study done by the Marine Corps, they will show you the data that it is dangerous having women in those frontline combat units. It lowers effectiveness. It lowers cohesion. It breaks down the ability of those men to do their jobs without the distraction of worrying about the females. But you're no longer allowed to have disagreements on this kind of thing. They disagreed with the old policy for decades, and until it was changed by the Senate. So that's kind of crazy. And the trans thing, the main argument there is that if you are in the process of transition as a trans person going one direction or the other, you are immediately non-deployable. So you cannot do the job for which you enlisted. You can't go anywhere. So there's a good readiness reason to say, you wouldn't bring somebody in who had a disease that eliminated them from being able to deploy. We can't bring people in who have HIV because they are immediately non-deployable. Does that mean we hate people with HIV? No, but why would you deliberately bring somebody into your organization who not only do you have to pay for that transition, but while they're doing it, they can't do their job. So Senator Duckworth, with respect, is talking out of both sides of her face. She knows these same answers, but she's giving the woke thing and saying if you disagree with her, you are clearly a misogynist. Right. And that is a false argument on her part.
Well, of course it is. I mean, it shows they're still committed to the identitarianism that in part spelled their defeat on November 5th, which is unsurprising. But one of the things too, and maybe this is an opportunity for Hegseth to just explain this to the American people. I'm talking about his confirmation hearing. There is no constitutional right to serve in the military.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
is a privilege. Right? I mean, there are standards that need to be met, and if you can't meet the standards, physical or criminal background, there are things that disqualify people who want to serve from serving. And there's a particular stated objective in the armed forces, and we're not supposed to shape the armed forces around the interests of somebody serving. We're supposed to make sure we're recruiting people to serve who can aid and abet the mission. Shouldn't be complicated, but everything seems to be like, if I want to do something, then I want to do it on my own terms, and that's not how the military is supposed to go.
No, not at all. And I will say one thing about Senator Duckworth's statement. One thing she said is true. There are thousands and thousands of women in the military who are in critical positions in our military. Well, people don't understand that for every person that's pulling a trigger in our military, depending on the service, we have somewhere between 10 or 12 up to 20 or 30 other people who don't go anywhere near the booms, bangs, but they're critical to the mission. They're logisticians. They're people who do the supporting activities, so those folks who do go boom and bang can do their job effectively. I don't think Hegseth is saying anything about getting those people out of the military. He's just saying they should not be in those frontline combat roles because of the downsides to the mission. Look, right now he's a citizen out in the population. He can believe whatever he wants on it, as long as he can, make the argument at his confirmation hearings that it's not because of some prejudice, which clearly he's shown no indication of it being involved with any sort of prejudicial thinking, any sort of gender bias. He's just making an assessment as a former combat leader as to what is going to get the job done and what is not going to help. And right now, he's right. All this woke training, it all is a decrement from the time that our folks need to be ready to defend the national interests and the population of the United States of America.
I just find it fascinating. There's 15,000 plus transgenders in the U.S. military. That is just an astonishing number. I had no idea it was so many. But what do you think should happen? I mean, should they be not allowed to serve in the military anymore? With this new administration?
I think people that are transgender and are transitioning. If somebody wants to be a trans person, and go and kiss the wrong gender, after duty hours, that's their business. But in unit, to sit there, the reason there's so many transgenders right now, Amy, is because they come in and it's mandated that the military then pay for all of the psychological part of the transitioning, which takes a long time. And then if the person desires all of the physical part, the medical changes, the drugs, if you wanted to do that, wouldn't you like to go in the military and let them pay for the whole thing? It's the
right.
ultimate free ride for them.
Yeah. That's
Well, and again, it's being celebrated, and you have spokespeople that are trans, and they're prattling on endlessly about inclusion, and which really is for them a synonym for entitlement. Something else that she said too, like just in terms of talking about Navy SEALs can we just be honest here? The idea that women are being forced to abide the same standards, physical standards, as men in the armed services, that's not true.
It's not. There's always been two different standards. There's still two different standards for the physical training tests. In those schools, there was so much scrutiny on the schools to make sure it didn't go in the opposite direction. They didn't throw somebody out just because they were female out of Ranger School or out of BUDS, the SEAL training, that it forced them to lower the standards either overall or in some cases specifically for the women. And I'm sorry, that's going to insult some folks. And I'll tell you what, the women who have gone through it, they're pretty tough. No doubt about it.
I'm sure,
Are
right?
they the same as the men? No, I don't think so.
Right.
You all have to abide by the same set of rules.
Yeah, and I got a text from a friend she is West Point, and she served. She's like, standards are not the same. Just like it's like this is part of the Trump mandate. Bring reality back to
Armed services.
to confront reality. I mean, that's let's confront reality again. That's part of making America great again. This is not denigrating women or women in the military. Let's be honest about what the landscape is, and then let's do things that make sense. With mission focus, not in terms of everybody's frickin' feelings all the time. Something else I wanted to get to, Stephen. This could be a remarkable moment. Not that I think Bibi has any plans on vacationing to Toronto, but Justin Trudeau was asked about this arrest warrant that the International Criminal Court issued for Bibi and his former Secretary of Defense there in Israel. And this is what he said. This is, our neighbor to the north, Western ally.
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians.
Yeah, who we are as Canadians. So that means, yes, Bibi would be arrested if he stepped foot in Canada because of this ICC warrant. I know we're not a party to the treaty, but that's sort of, this is bigger than that. And the message that needs to be sent, even pre-inauguration and for his national security team to Trudeau and the Western world about this, that America is not going along with this charade. Don't even think about doing that. There will be implications from us the same way that Trump uses trade policy or energy policy to leverage other countries on other issues. I mean, this is a significant national security issue with these Western countries, including Western Europe and Canada, going down this rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah, this is, we've done this before. When we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, the International Criminal Court indicted my old boss, Secretary Rumsfeld,
and
President Bush. And Rumsfeld the next day said, well, gee, that's a shame. I guess we'll have to move NATO headquarters and all these other things that we have over there out of Belgium because we can no longer do our job because of this crazy thing. And you know what? A day later, they dropped the indictments.
Mm-hmm.
I think America should stand up, and maybe Secdef Hegseth will get to do this, ought to say the same thing over this issue. It is ridiculous. There is no moral equivalency between Netanyahu and his former Minister of Defense and Hamas. Come on, give me a break. It is ridiculous. There's not even have done anything in any way, shape, or form that violates international law. The man bringing the indictments is a known anti-Semite and radical Muslim. Really? Do you think that's the man that should be the arbiter of whether Israel has done something wrong or not? I don't think so.
And meanwhile, Montreal's in flames as Trudeau gives over to the pro-Hamas protesters there, just like we've seen in big cities and college campuses in this country. It's just obscene.
Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, he's a terrible dancer, too, and lip syncer. Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer, top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, and have a happy Thanksgiving, both of you.
You too.
You too. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Wow. Are you buying or are you selling? As this is being written, silver is up more than 50% in just the past 8 months. And gold is the highest it's ever been. Whether you are just getting into the metals, want to roll your IRA into silver or gold, or want to take some profits off the table, Fox Valley Coins is ready, willing, and able to help. Even though Fox Valley Coins is a national dealer, they're family-owned and in your own backyard. Fox Valley Coins in Naperville almost always has the product you want in stock and pretty much always has